Hello. I'd like to take a little time and talk with you about a piece I'm calling American Gothic. I did this piece in Procreate a couple of months ago, back in I think September, maybe early October. And so I want to be just clear up front and let you know that this is not being rendered in Procreate 5. This was completed about a month or so before that update came out. However, there was a little bit of touch-up work done at the end with that Procreate 5 update that was completed recently. Now, as we get into this, let me just address, I think, what needs to be stated right up front. This is obviously not completely an original piece of work. It's based off a painting, a parody, if you will, of a painting called American Gothic by Grant Wood, painted in 1930, and if I'm not mistaken, the painting is hanging in the Art Institute of Chicago, has for some time. This is a very famous painting. That's why I'm attempting to go for the parody here. I'm not trying to put it out there that this is completely my original work by any stretch. This is meant to be something of a tongue-in-cheek take off of what Grant Wood has done. So I'm painting over top of it, but more importantly, what I'm trying to do here is something like a painting inception, or a paintception, if you will. I'm doing a painting of a painting hanging on a wall. So we start with the initial image itself. I got a copy of this from the internet through a Google search. I imported it into Procreate, and now I'm doing some painting over top of it. Now, this initial piece I'm doing here is going to get deleted pretty quickly. I didn't know exactly where I was going with this right away, so started with painting over the overalls, but I will get rid of that. I wanted to keep it. But notice what I'm doing right now, the nail and the string. This is the part of this where we kind of get into this idea of a painting hanging on a wall. And right off the bat, I'm trying to really kind of sell this idea that the light source in the painting is not the same as the light source as the painting hanging on the wall. So the light source affecting the nail is coming from the upper right, but the light source in the Grant Wood painting is coming from the upper left, casting shadow on the other side of the characters' faces. So again, there is really kind of been to be something messing with your eye a little bit there to really sell this idea that it's a painting hanging on the wall, the paintception, as it were. But the parody in and of itself also comes from the character that's going to be painted over top of the farmer's head. We're going to be putting in Pennywise from the Stephen King book and the recent It movie. Got rid of the painting over the overalls. Again, that was an initial attempt there to maybe just do a full body painting and completely paint over top of the figure. I backed it out and changed my mind and thought it would be a little bit more comical if it was just the head and the hand. Essentially Pennywise wearing the farmer's outfit, holding that pitchfork. Again, that just struck me as a little bit more humorous, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, so that's what I decided to go with. Now, just briefly here, let me kind of speak to the ethics of this. There might be some people out there that think that this is somehow not ethically okay, that there's some sort of problem with painting over top of somebody else's work and presenting it as your own. And my comment on that is really that I guess it depends on the reasons that you're doing it and what you're trying to represent. I am trying to do a humorous parody of something. I am making it very, very obvious, at least I think I am, that this is not really my work. I'm doing very little overpainting. All I'm doing is painting over one head. The rest of the painting is still intact, and I think in doing that, it's very clear that I'm trying to do something humorous and a parody of something that obviously is not my own work initially. The thing about this, though, is this was inspired by something that's actually happening in modern-day politics. There's a lot of news stories right now being released about politicians that are using doctored photographs that look very, very real to represent some sort of a point of view or to prove a point that they're trying to make on their political platform. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of who's doing what or whether or not it's right or wrong. I just want to kind of make a comment here that I think that presenting a photograph as the truth when it in fact is not, and it could fool others into thinking that it's the truth, is in fact where I have an ethical issue. I'm not trying to represent this as something that I created wholly from scratch. It is something that I think most people will recognize as something that is comedy and also parody and not meant to represent a truth. And so this, ethically, I think isn't safe ground, whereas photographs being represented as a truth, I think cross that line. Free speech is something I'm all about, I'm an advocate for, but representing a lie as something that is the truth is where I kind of draw the line. And again, I'm not trying to lie here. I want to make it very clear. This is not initially my work. This is just a parody off an existing work. And hopefully I'm kind of covering that base there and establishing where that line exists, at least ethically. Now, if I move on to another topic here, I just want to take a moment and talk about the caricature itself of Pennywise. Pennywise is just fun to draw, especially if you're the sort of person that is looking to do caricature. You don't learn it unless you practice it, and Pennywise is a great caricature to start with. There's a lot of mistakes you can make, and it's very forgiving. I mean, and if you think about it, it makes sense. He's got a very unusually shaped head, very round up at the top. He's got very big, thick, full lips that are very easy to kind of draw and exaggerate. But more importantly than anything else, his face is mostly white, and then you have the red lines around the lips, the nose, and then the ones that come up to the cheek and over the eyes that help you define form on the face. And even if you get a lot of the form wrong, or you don't draw the lines very accurately, it's still going to be readable as Pennywise because nobody else is wearing makeup that looks just like that. So again, very forgiving if you're just trying to starting out on caricature for the first time. It can really kind of help you gain a little confidence. It can help be a very good learning exercise. And really, that's what this piece was all about for me. So above and beyond this notion of trying to kind of parody somebody else's work, this is also a really good exercise for me to start learning about shapes of head and how to paint them. Because at this point, you'll notice I've lowered the opacity on the painting that I'm working on. And the reason for that is because I want Grant Wood's initial painting to kind of come up from behind it and give me some education as to where I should be putting the shadows, and also how light or dark or how saturated those shadows should be. This is, again, a learning exercise for me. I did this several months ago, so at this point I'm still learning how to use the Procreate program. I'm still working on some issues in my head with color theory and how shadow and light work, and then this was a great learning tool to help me out with that. And so this may be a little bit controversial to say, but I think in the reality of the situation is there's a little bit of tracing going on here, but in this case I'm going to say it's okay. I'm not trying to make money off this piece of work. I'm not saying it's wholly my own work, but I will say that I've learned a lot from it, and I'll use it to inform paintings that are original works that I'll do in the future. And that's what I think what tracing is good for, and to a certain degree what an exercise like this can help out with, at least from a learning experience. Learning how to render light can be a tricky thing. Learning how to render anything in 3 dimensions can be a really, really tough thing to learn how to do if you don't have a lot of experience with it. So, doing things like this, exercises like this, where you kind of learn off of a master who's figured it all out, can be a really valuable learning experience, can really inform how you approach your artwork in the future, and, at least in my opinion, and this is the experience that I've had, can help put your head in the mind frame of the person that initially did the painting. So in this case, I feel like I was kind of inspired by Grant Wood, but I also got inside of his head a little bit to understand how he puts pieces of artwork together and how he thinks about rendering paintings. Now, let me also say that it may not necessarily look this great right now. The Pennywise head is very obvious. It stands out quite a bit from the style of the rest of the painting here. My goal was to try to make sure that I match this up as much as possible. The painting that I'm doing right now is just very saturated compared to the rest of the colors in the initial art itself, and so there was something that had to be done to correct that, to help it blend a little bit more. My idea on this was to just paint it as is. Paint it as I wanted it to. Make sure that I tried to get the shadows and the light in as accurately as I could. And once I was happy with it, then work on the hand as well. Do the same thing. Render those shadows. Use the underpainting there, so to speak, as something of a guide to help out. But ultimately, once all the painting was done and I was satisfied with all the colors were, then I could lay something over top. Another layer. And that layer would help out with a little bit of a color tone. And also, I would take the initial layers that have all the Pennywise paints on them and lower their opacity a little bit as well. So the additional layers act as something like filters, and then lowered opacity helps bring out a little bit of that saturation a little bit, and that combination hopefully pulls off the effect that allows that overpainting that I've done to blend in and kind of match up with the existing paints underneath of it and help give it this idea that that was initially how it was painted and it all kind of belongs there. Maybe I wasn't 100% successful. I think there's some other things I could have done that I wasn't aware that the software was capable of, when I did this. But again, this is a learning exercise, and what I did learn from it was a lot more about how to use the Procreate tool to create little tricks and effects that will help me out in future pieces of art. So again, take this for what it is. I feel like it was a fun little exercise. It was very tongue-in-cheek. I was laughing a lot of the time I was painting it, despite the scary nature of the piece. I do have a pretty morbid sense of humor, and it being roughly Halloween didn't hurt here. But above and beyond everything else was, again, a learning experience. And if it encourages you to do something similar, then by all means I say go for it. Even if tracing or anything like that might be a little bit controversial, just remember the ethics of it. I feel like it's okay to trace as long as you're learning from it and not representing it as your own original work. The minute you trace something and say, here, I did this and had no help, that's where I think there's an ethical breach. You're representing a lie at that point, and that's where the line needs to be drawn. Trace if you need to, but learn from it. Make sure that it's clear that it's an exercise and that you're learning from it, and that's why it's okay to kind of do it like that. But use it to inspire original work, and that's what this is all about. Now, I'm going to take a moment here to do a little selfless plug before I sign off. Thank you for watching. If you don't mind, click on that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment if you have something to kind of add here, if you have some suggestions to make. And in addition, more than anything else, please share this. Get the word out. I'm trying to do some good work here, and I hope that if we can grow this audience, I can continue to do it. In the meantime, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll have more content out soon. Thank you.